I strained my eyes just right. I can almost see it. So a lot of which, especially in census time, will look at
a lot of things that go into preparing a my trustee area plan. The first of which is kind of the resolution. The next, we take into a lot of factors of the community. We talk about what's called a one person, one vote factor, which means we look at the population, not the voter population, but the population as a whole of the district, for example, and find out where those population centers are. Then we look at communities of interest, why certain communities might want to be put together, why certain communities might want to be separated, kind of natural boundaries, so to speak. And we have what they call them demographers. It's a fancy name for like map makers, but they really know how to put all these things together and then give you options in order to look at what different trustee areas look like. Typically give you 3, because if we give you just 1, it's not really a choice. 2, it seems like you got to choose either or. So we usually give you 3 options to look at the trustee areas that you'd be interested in. You can also take into account where the incumbents, which would be you folks, or prior incumbents even, have lived historically, and that can also be kind of factored in. There's all kinds of factors that go into it. None of it's really essentially binding, except for the one person, one vote factor, which is a constitutional requirement. Basically saying, you know, when we develop these things out, we have to make sure that we're not, you know, diluting anybody's vote, and that it's roughly fairly equal across the board in terms of trying to find the population centers that make the most sense. So that goes through a process. If you decide to go through the resolution, then there's a whole bunch of other meetings that we have to do. So that's kind of the next slide that we talk about. But first, let's talk about the fun stuff. Back in 2017, there was a change in the law, and it relates to the California voting rights. If someone suspects that you have an at-large voting system that is diluting the vote of some protected class, they can give you basically this demand letter. And this demand letter says, hey, you're an at-large district. We think you're a risk. We might sue you. There's districts that have been sued. Dr. Miller and I were just talking about a couple of them. Sometimes it winds up resulting in litigation in the millions of dollars. Sometimes districts never get sued at all. It just kind of depends on, you know, who's watching, what watch group is interested in it. The reason they're interested in it is because it automatically pays their attorney's fees if they win. So there's a lot of incentive for plaintiffs' attorneys out there to look at at-large districts and consider that as something to look into. One way you can prevent that is if you have already kind of adopted a resolution that says, hey, we're going to move to a trustee area, that demand letter has really no force and effect, because you've already said, we're in the process, we're moving to a trustee area. So, you know, we don't owe you right off the bat 30 grand on top of other potential attorney's fees. So that's why a lot of at-large districts consider that. Not to say that there's anything wrong with an at-large district. It's just those are the types of districts that typically get looked at when there's a potential plaintiffs out there. Prior to preparing the maps, and we'll go back to that, right? We have to have at least 2 public hearings. And I can't reiterate this enough. There's a ton of meetings that you have to have, and it essentially boils down to 5. So the first one would be a resolution at a board meeting. Then there would be 2 hearings, which basically bring in community input, what they want the trustee areas to look like, what, you know, considerations should be. So the community gets kind of a voice and a thought on that. Then after those 2 hearings, then we get to establish or develop the 3 sample maps that the demographers develop. And then we come back and we do, guess what, 2 more meetings. So resolution, 2 meetings, maps, and then another 2 meetings. I think the next slide goes into that. And so that's the 2 hearings, and they have to be between, you know, a certain period. And you also have to have kind of a trial hold phase and publish for at least 7 days before you have the back-to-back meetings. Okay, then after that, there's yet again another meeting that has to happen, and that's where the trustee map that you approved essentially and done after those 4 board meetings will go to the county committee, who holds yet another meeting and decides whether to approve or not approve the map. They very rarely don't approve the map because you've done all this work ahead of time, and there's a lot of information that you've already put into it, a lot of thinking, a lot of community involvement. So it's very rare that that happens. They have the public hearing. They either approve or reject it. I don't think our firm has had very many rejections at all throughout the state of California, so it's not something that happens very often. So if approved, there's two ways that this gets kind of adopted. One is it goes to the voters in the community, and they decide to vote whether to have a trustee system or not. But then there's the other way, which is almost the most common, if not the only way that anyone ever does it anymore, and that is you request a state waiver from the process to have it go through the standard kind of voting body for the area. The reason you do that is because if it goes to an election and you spent all this time, you spent money on demographers, you spent money on attorney's fees, and it gets to the popular vote and they vote it down no, then you just spent all that money and you're still in that large district, and you still potentially have that risk that someone's going to follow up with a lawsuit or something like that. So that's why it's very rare that districts decide to go with doing the trustee area by popular vote in the community. So what happens is you use what's called a waiver from the State Board of Education. You apply for the waiver that says, we've done all this stuff, we're going to apply for the waiver from the state board to waive the requirement that you have a vote in the community. And then the State Board of Education, we have yet to have one not approved because they know that we've gone through 5 meetings plus gone through the county to get to this stage. And so oftentimes, I don't know if we've had one yet that's been rejected for the waiver. So that means that once that happens, we get the waiver, we avoid the uncertainty of what happens in an election, we avoid the cost of putting it on an election, which has its own costs. And then and there, after all of that, the waiver is approved. Then lo and behold, you'd be a trustee area, and that's kind of where we go. So there is a stakeholder feedback requirement. And as you go through the process, we help you figure out, what stakeholder meetings you have to have, what kind of consultations you have to have. You have to also meet with your unions to see if they support, oppose, or are neutral. Likewise, your DLAC, your LCAP, your bilingual advisory committees, all of those are part of it, and that we receive the feedback from. So it's kind of a robust community involvement event that we do. But at the end of the day, you're more than likely going to get your waiver request, and then the district would then be by area trustees. You can also, through the process, change the number of board seats if you want it. You can do it to 3, which is very unusual. More often it's 5 for a district that is this size. You can also keep it at 7 if you wanted. That's all dependent upon how you want to apply for the trustee areas and that sort of thing. So then again, once the waiver is approved, you are now trustees by trustee area, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you as incumbents are suddenly then removed. You serve out your terms, and then after your term expires, that's when the new trustee area system would go into effect. So it would go into effect, right? Like 3 would go in the new trustee areas, and then the next 4, and then vice versa. I don't know, is it 4 or 3 for the next election?
3.
It's 3, yeah. So it'd be 3, and then the next 2 years later, it would be 4, or whatever, depending on how you decide to splice things up, if you do. The reason why this is important, and we're talking about it now, is because the census happens every 10 years. And part of what happens in the census is if you are divided by trustee areas, they look at the census and see how, essentially the population has changed. And then the county will go in and basically start redrawing your trustee areas based on how the population has changed. And so we don't have the results yet until September because COVID kind of delayed everything. So we're in this weird world where we have kind of a really tight time frame from now until September of 2021 to see what's really going on, and then from there until essentially May to go through a trustee area, so that the next general election in 2022 would be by trustee area. So it's not an impossible test by any means. We have demographers where we held spots so that we can make sure the districts are going to do what can within that time frame, and then that would be that's the process. It's a lot to go through. Any questions? No.
what does this process usually take from start to finish? Like
Yeah,
generally,
so let's say in a perfect world, right, we started in, let's say July or May, June, whatever. You'd have that process pretty well finished, probably by the end of February, March of the next year. So it takes about a year, less than a year or so to do it, but there's plenty of time between now and 2022 election to have it happen.
and just one more question, and this might not be a smart question, but I don't understand how it's more fair and not diluting if you don't allow everyone in the community to voice their opinion on who they're electing to be their elected officials, and you're only letting a small group of people in a small area. How is that more fair?
Right, that is the general question, right? Because then only you get to vote for that kind of one trustee area in that section. But likewise, it could be said that, you know, if you don't break it up, then that vote is diluted across the entire district as opposed to being maybe concentrated in certain areas that are more reflective of that protected class. That's why they look at it that way. It doesn't mean that an at-large election there's anything wrong with it, right? It just means that that's typically how it's played out, right? So they're trying to reduce that risk of the at-large, I guess, the at-large watered down effect.
Mm-hmm.
So in an area like our community, I mean, it's broken up quite a bit, and there's a lot of mainly rural area. You know, what if there's a district that's drawn and there's nobody in that area that wants to do this? You know, that, I mean, because this is not a glorious, glamorous thing we're doing. You know, what do you do? Right? I mean, I don't have any endorsement deals or anything.
I don't think any of us are knocking at my door.
Yeah.
Nike hasn't come by?
No, if they're not, it's usually bad. So, you know, what do you do then?
Yeah, so the trustee area.
But there's two people, you know, there's two people in another area that want to do, you know, want to help, want to step up.
Yeah, that is a good question. And that's something as a board you need to think about, because when you do it by trustee area, you're right? You may not have anyone from that area. And then what happens is you have to appoint, right? And so you still have to appoint someone from that area.
Because that's
right.
fair.
Yeah, so there is benefits.
Yeah, I think one interesting point though, I know that there's one district that paid $10 million for not being trustee. And the litigation and it's real, and especially after a census, it will be real.
I think there was a neighboring town that went to this issue. They were not happy with the process, but us not doing it leaves us open to litigation, to lawsuit basically.
Essentially, yeah. And the most recent in this area was Selma. I believe they got recently sued on the exact same issue.
How recent?
Within the last, I think it was the last 6 months, I want to say. So it is alive and well in Central Valley. But
This is why we don't have Mings. Things
So
like
if we get a
this.
waiver and go through this process, can we still be in that large district?
well, no, because if you go through the process to become trustee area and you get the waiver and it's approved, you would now be a trustee area.
Trustee,
If you don't do anything, then you'd stay at large. You could, adjust the number of board seats if you wanted and all that. But again, once you start the process and you become by trustee area, you have to essentially go through a similar process to go back to at large. But again, you're going to run the same risks as like Selma and other places that were at large and that are now, potentially at risk for those California.
Population in Selma.
I'm not exactly sure. I think they're a little bit larger than you folks, but not.
yeah, they're quite a bit. They're a lot bigger than us.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
5,030, I think.
These districts work good because
Yeah.
you see a whole lot of gerrymandering, I think, kind of happening, and I'm just going to say it. Okay, so because you're drawing lines.
Right, you have to. Right.
And someone is determining what these lines are. In the city of Dos Palace, which is 5,000, an at-large district where everybody votes counts. I mean, this in a town this size seems to be the most fairest way. And then Dos Palace, we're a very traditional community as well. We go do this, I think we're going to have more problems than with the system we have now. But current law is wanting us to do something that works maybe fine in large, but these are small towns.
Right.
This is the way that's done. We don't do this For city council, we don't do this.
There's no way to get around the appointing. I don't like the part you have to appoint if somebody doesn't sign up to run from that area.
Yeah.
Is there any way to get around that?
There really isn't, because you still have to find someone from that area willing to stand up and.
I mean, who's gonna accept that position that they didn't want to step up and run?
Run in the first place.
I mean, that creates a lot of problems.
It does.
But this also creates a problem now because now we're aware of it. And if we don't go through it, now if it comes up and we're sued, we're liable. I mean, that's-
So we're liable, so then how quickly can we go into once somebody brings a suit?
Well,
It's
see,
gonna
once,
cost us $30,000.
so if you adopt a resolution and you get that letter and you show them the resolution that we're going through the process,
So,
that's it.
so we can adopt the resolution, and if it takes us, whoever says the amount of years, I'm not. Y'all know what I'm saying? It could take a while. It could take a while.
But he says it could be done in a year.
But you can do it, you can do less than that, right?
But that's if they do it in a year. I mean, it could take us longer than a year. You know, and that's what I'm saying. So we adopt the resolution. It is our shield.
Essentially, yeah.
And if it takes us longer than a year, could be several, I don't know. It takes a while to get decisions happening here.
Yeah, what I will say though about the demographers and how they figure out trustee areas, they are very good at figuring out what's going to work. They do it for rural districts, they do it for urban districts. This is not something that is their first pitch in.
But this is
And correct me if I'm wrong, the reason why this is before us now is to actually give us a say-so in the matter in some of these things, other than it's gonna be pushed on us, and they're gonna tell us how it's done, right?
They could, right.
They could, so I was in the assumption that it's gonna happen no matter what.
It's not gonna happen no matter what, but there's very few at-large districts that are still gonna stay at-large. I will tell you that, so you will be kind of sticking out.
I thought the county was going to make this move regardless of whether we wanted to or not.
I was on a Zoom meeting and, I'll get more information, but they basically were saying that, and maybe it's from the county council or something like
Yeah, very
that.
good, will, very well.
The deadline was March of 2022.
To move that way
Yes,
in our county.
Yeah. And again, they're looking at it from the kind of general risk perspective. I'm not aware of anything that requires Merced County to necessarily have to do that. But having said that, if Dr. Teachin and the board move that way, that very well could be something that you're kind of required.
So if we adopt a resolution by March of 2022, I'm just thinking.
Then we'd get away for another 2 years.
Yeah, well, the risk of that too is that if you do it by 2022, the process will not be finished until the next general election. I think what they're saying is that the process finished by March of 2022, because then that would allow the next, I guess, November would be kind of the timeframe when that a general election. So I think that's what they're doing.
So we still have time to discuss this later, right?
This is just an informational item.
This is just information.
Yeah, just to give you an idea of what's
There's
out
gonna be a lot
there.
coming down, I think.
Yeah.
We'd like to get a lot of input from the community on this one.
Yep. Are there any other questions? Is there?
All right, thank you.
8.1, communications and or audience comments. Public concerns will be heard by the board at this time. However, they will not be discussed. Policy number 9323 limits individuals' presentations to 3 minutes. The president may extend the time under certain circumstances. This is the opportunity for members of the public to focus on issues important to the district's purpose of education. Under board policy, this time may not be used to present a derogatory information of a personal nature on any employee. Members of the public who wish to address the board must speak from the podium and identify themselves. Is there anyone here to speak? Public comment. Item 9.1, adoption of routine consent items. The consent counter represents routine items acted upon in one motion by roll call vote. The recommendation for adoption unless otherwise specified. Any item may be removed for discussion upon request. Contracts, agreements, proposals. 9.2, agreement for special contract services for workability job developer. 2020-21. 9.3, SIA attention to attendance, A2A, software and services agreement. 9.4, CSU Stanislaus Student Teaching Agreement Amendment. 9.5, contract for services work plan, Merced County Office of Education, math, professional development for all district schools, 2021, 2022. 9.6, SOPHOS firewall renewal. 9.7, Borderland web filter renewal. Donations 9.8, equipment grant donation to Dallas Palace High School baseball. Minutes 9.9, board minutes of the 3/18/21 regular board meeting and 3/25/21 special board meeting. Warrants and payroll 9.10, warrants and payroll. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mrs. Davis, second by Mr. Merced. Are there any questions on any of the items?
Yes,
Yes?
yes. On the contract for MTOE, the math development or whatever, how do we know it's working? What are we using to show that all this money that we're giving them is going to be beneficial?
Lolly,
You wanna-
I think it's also, I mean, we obviously do benchmark assessments and things like that, so it's tied to benchmark assessments, but if you want to share other stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. This is on item 9.5, contract for services with the Merced County Office of Education Math Professional Development for all schools. Is that correct, Ms. Ozzie?
Yes.
Yeah, I can say more to it, and like Dr. Miller mentioned, has to do with the benchmark that we have established. And benchmark basically are metrics to see what kids need to be learning by what time. So that's one way for us to keep track if it is working or not working. The other way is to find out from teachers themselves. And based on the feedback that we have gotten from teachers, is that there is trust. And trust is the critical part of any support that we're providing teachers, because teachers have to feel that whatever support or coaching is provided to them is actually making a difference in the day-to-day practice. So with this particular contract was already in place prior to me getting here. But in talking to the coaches, it's something that I feel very comfortable building on because of the fact, what I said earlier, that there is trust between the teachers and the coaches. The coaches themselves are highly sought after in the county. Dwayne is one of the originals who started with this thing, working at DPE. And he's phenomenal in terms of his knowledge, content knowledge of it. Emily Tijan is somebody who was a former high school teacher here with us. And she's working with the secondary teacher. And she has built tremendous trust with the middle school teachers particularly. And I think she has been a difference maker in teachers being more willing to change their practice and looking at what makes a difference in what kids do day to day. So having those two as metrics, the benchmark and the trust from teachers, I feel very confident in standing here and saying to you that it is going to make a difference going forward, because we not only asking for renewal for the next school year, but in the next 3 years. And we have this whole process that Mrs. Grijalva is doing in developing the LCAP, in having specific goals of what we are going to be meeting in the next 3 years. So it's a comprehensive plan. And again, that's how I feel comfortable standing here and saying that it is making a difference in the area of math for our kids.
Thank you, Mr. Lopez. Ms. Austin, would you like 9.5 pulled from the consent calendar and voted on individually?
I would like to see the data when it comes available to see if it's going to be worth renewing again when time comes up.
We want to see if it's effective, is basically what she's saying. Has it been effective? We used, who else is out there that does this? Do we have anything else to compare it to? Either. I'm just asking this question.
We can get professional development through curriculum, specific, like, so if we're adopting curriculum through Eureka Math. The difference is that's a one-time shot. So they're gonna come one time, they're gonna provide the curriculum, they're not gonna have buy-in, and they're gonna leave. great thing about math and the county is they've bought into our program, our teachers have bought into them, and they're a continual resource. Our teachers are emailing them constantly. Our teachers are reaching out with text messages. So they are.
And we can definitely bring the data because we do have the benchmark from the first last year to this year, and we can look at the elementary. I'm thinking top of my head, Tk8 was Paul's Elementary, which they did those benchmarks last year, and then we did it this year, even though the conditions are different. But I think you can see a difference there in terms of how the kids did.
How long have we been using them for?
I'm sorry.
How long have we been using them for?
Again, we have had them
3
years.
My first year as a principal.
It was just Dwayne only for
Yes,
the first 3 years, and then Emily came in this past year
And so
for secondary. But I can say this, and the teachers, and the data backs this up, is that the teachers reiterate this at Bryant Middle School, but this is the strongest math group of sixth graders that they've had in a very long time. And that's a reflection of Dwayne Hobecker, what he's done with the Merced County Office of Ed. He gets down on the ground with teachers, shoulder to shoulder, and works with kids. And not only just teaching the standards and the benchmarks, but also, and it's all about layers. Not one thing fixes everything, but you have benchmarks, you have math coaches, you have training, you have a lot of these pieces that all go together that make up a successful program. And so, again, Emily Tejan's a layer at the secondary, and Dwayne Hobecker's a layer at the elementary. And our teachers really, really respect them.
And this is just a 1-year renewal for the next school year. And at that point, then we can review all this data before we go ahead and continue it for the following years, correct?
Absolutely, and even thinking about the funding source that we're using, I venture to say that CSI is one of the funding sources that we're using that is limited in terms of us showing results. So math is an area of need for the middle school. So this is one strategy that we're using to improve those achievements. But to the question, what is the data that we are going to be using? Like I said, we can use the benchmark. We can also do a survey from the staff to get their perception data. Unfortunately, we did not do the state assessments last year. It was suspended. And this year, I think a conversation with the principal is that we want to move forward with it. But it's difficult to compare when you don't have data, and that is frankly out of our hands because that was suspended by the state last year.
I just think our data pool during COVID times as well is going to be.
Although our sixth graders were probably the strongest they've been in a long time, even though it was in a pandemic. And so with that being said, a lot of it has to do with what's being done at Marks and the growth that's happened in that short time frame with benchmarks, with coaching, and how they've trickled up. So
we've done number talks as one of the embedded strategies, and that's continued through the pandemic. And if you look at our data through Illuminate, even our kinder to our second graders have improved in math through the pandemic. And that's one of the strategies that have been embedded through Dwayne's services.
So I know that the elementary, they have a lot of local testing, for lack of a better word. Is the same thing at secondary? I mean, and that would be a way for us to see that it works. Because I agree. Elementary, they are doing phenomenal work. They're going to have an awesome foundation. And it does take a while to get to high school. I understand that too. But if there are some type of local assessments, that should show the data too.
Yeah, and Mrs. Austin, the answer to that is yes. We do have those benchmarks at the Bryant and the high school as well. It is a process. We did start at the elementary level. I can say confidently that it's pretty strong in terms of the collaboration that's happening there. But I will say that we're getting to that level at Bryant because of that foundational trust that is there with the coach now. And that's something that I think is going to make a difference. The high school, we have a plan for that. I know that Mrs. Crivelli met with Mrs. Tijan, Emily Tijan, last week or so, and they developed a plan as to how they are going to be utilizing her services to make sure that it does have an impact, direct impact on students.
And I completely get that, current pandemic, we're not going to have the data that's going to say, hey, this worked. But I just want to know, is there something in place that's going to be able to track that data and not rely on the state test, because we all know that state test is not gonna necessarily accurately reflect what's going on. But if we have local assessments in place that is gonna track how we're growing, that would be enough to say, yeah, this 65 grand is worth it.
Absolutely. And we do have that. We do have that.
Thank you. Ms. Austin, are you comfortable with it? So we have a motion and a second. Information, so I'll call for the vote, please.
Thank you.
That's passed. Action item 10.1, declaration of appreciation of teachers and classified employees. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mrs. Davis. Seconded by Mr. Merced. Dr. Miller?
So in honor of the recognition and dedication of the work ethic of certificated and classified staff members in our district, we're going to proclaim May 3rd through the 7th as Teacher Appreciation Week, and the week of May 16th to the 22nd as Classified School Employees Appreciation Week. And as far as Dos Palace is concerned, we are extremely thankful for our teachers and our classified staff. They've done a fantastic job through the pandemic, and there should be 2 weeks for them each, not just one.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Call for the vote. It passes. Item 10.2, 2019-20 annual financial audit. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mrs. Davis, seconded by Mr. Merced.
There'll be a presentation by our external auditor, Loretta Merrill. She'll be on the.
So,
Hi.
hello.
Good evening.
Hi, Loretta, can you hear us?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Loretta. I'm your main auditor for your district. And we're going to go over your report. We're going to do it kind of quickly because there's a lot of information in here and I'd like to get through most of it. So on this first page, first I'd like to thank you all for having me tonight to present this. And I'd like to thank the district staff for being so helpful during the remote auditing. It's been crazy this year and we've had to ask for so much stuff and everyone's been really gracious in getting it to us. So I thank you all. So in our audit process, we sample the school sites twice a year. We come usually around August and do the preliminary, which is the state compliance and procedural testing. And then we come again back in usually September, October, sometimes November, and we complete the audit for the year with the ending balance testing, and then we draft your audit report. Yeah, usually we do a lot of work remotely. We're used to working remotely, but this year it's been 100%, and it's been pretty good. Okay, so in our independent auditor's report, it was noted as unmodified, and the independent auditor's report, it discusses management's responsibility for the financial statements and our responsibility for issuing an opinion. And as you can see, our opinion was that the statements are fairly presented, which means that they're materially correct. So we're doing a little different this year. Usually we say oops, can you go back one slide? Okay, so this year we're going to do the findings up front first. And on our internal controls, we noted no report level findings, but we did have a few ASB findings that are reported in the management letters. Do you want me to go over those with you?
Yes, please.
Okay. So all of the findings are, they're they're ASB findings from each of the schools. So at Dos Palos Elementary, we had a finding that pre-numbered sub-receipts are not being used. The ASB bookkeeper is using receipts, but when the money comes into her, it should also have receipts showing where it came from, and that's not being done. And then we also have one for timely deposits, that we found some deposits, they're not made timely to the bank. So we noted a couple instances where the money was collected by the site and then deposited to the bank over a month later. And then there's a bank reconciliation finding, and this is throughout Dos Palos Elementary, Bryant Middle, and the high school, that the reconciliations are being done for the bank statements, but a second person needs to independently review it and sign it, and that's not happening. And then for Bryant Middle School, there's cash disbursements findings that we noted that the approvals are dated after the invoice, showing that the expenditure wasn't pre-approved. And there was also an expenditure that had no approvals at all. And also at Bryant Middle School, the revenue potential forms, they're not being completed consistently. They're started, and then they get the approval for the fundraiser, and then they don't finish the revenue potential. And then again, they have the same bank reconciliation finding. And Dos Palos High School that has the same bank reconciliation finding, that it's being done, but nobody's reviewing it and signing it. And on their cash receipts, it's the same as with the elementary school. There's no backup coming in with the cash being collected. It's given to the ASB bookkeeper, but there's no backup receipt showing where that money came from. It's just, she's just given a pile of money. And on the ticket control, we also noted that there's, you're not using a master ticket log to keep track of the tickets that are, used for sporting events and things like that, dances, whatever happens. And then the last one is also a cash disbursements finding at the high school. Again, there were multiple instances where the disbursement was not properly pre-approved. It means they're going out and buying stuff and then coming back and wanting to get it approved after the fact. They're just management letter findings, so we'll follow up on them next year to make sure that they're corrected. And the federal and state compliance, there were no findings there, which is really good. And the management discussion and analysis, this contains condensed versions of the financial statements and the footnotes in tables that are comparative format, with the prior year, so you can see the difference. And we complete this part of the audit to ensure that it agrees with the audited statements, but there's also a summaries and topics section that's completed by the district. That's, you can put your own words into it. And it summarizes the assumptions used in the preparation of the 2020-2021 budget. And this gives the district a chance to discuss topics specific to the district. And on the statement of net position and the statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, these statements, they combine all your government funds and incorporate your capital assets and long-term debt. And the net position equals your entity-wide, which is all your funds combined. And then the fund balance refers to funds like in the unaudited actuals and the budgets and the interim reports. And we're also going to we'll look at the financial statements, and we'll look at the supplement. Well, we won't look at any additional supplementary schedules. That's not on the agenda. So if we move to the statement of net position, the district's net position ended at $15.1 million, and the unrestricted part of that was negative 14.7 million. The general obligation bonds was 3.5 million. And the net OPEB liability is 1.5 million, and that's the cost of future retirement for active employees and retirees. And the net pension obligation is 30 million. And on this, we net out, we subtract out the deferred outflows, which is 9.3 million, 9.1 million, excuse me, and we add in the deferred inflows, which is 1.5 million. So that impacts your ending net position by 22.4 million. And the district's fair share of unfunded STRS and PERS pension obligations are included in the pension obligation. So the selected highlights are the general fund. It decreased this year by $313,000 down to 9.8 million. And the available reserves ended at 15.23. And I have on here, I have it, the board adopted the minimum target at 9%, and that should be 16%. And on the report, it says 9, but I had talked with Melissa and it had changed several years ago, and we have to have the board policy showing that it changed, or the resolution. And she sent that to me. So now I know that it is 16%. And the state minimum is 3%. So you guys are way above that. And, you know, we don't want anyone getting near that minimum. So it looks pretty good. And your ADA has remained relatively steady over the past few years. So that looks good. And that's really all I have on the report. Are there any questions? Does anybody have any questions?
The stop gaps for the issues that you mentioned, that's something that we do in-house, not something that you participate in doing with us. You just make the finding and then we clean it up in-house, and then you check back on it when you do your next audit. Is that correct?
Oh, on the ASB findings? Well, yeah, you give us we ask for a recommendation, and on each item, you guys provide us with what you're going to do to fix it. And then when we come back out and audit, we look at it again, and hopefully it's corrected.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. No more questions?
Call for the vote.
Okay, well, if there's no more questions, then thank you all so much for having me and letting me present this report to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Senate passes. Item 10.3, 2021-22 school calendar. Is there a motion? By Mr. Moran,
Second.
Second by Mrs. Davis.
So this is the school calendar for 21-22, and it's very, very similar to this school year's. It's actually prior to the pandemic, it's very similar to that one. As far as having a couple of days at the beginning of the school year and a couple of days, 2 days of staff development in the school year. And so we consulted with local news groups and some of the school calendar for 21-22.
Any questions for Dr. Miller about the school calendar? Call the vote. Passes. 10.4 Tk8 Summer School. Is there a motion? By Mr. Moran,
Second.
second by Ms. Davis. Ready? Mrs. Hall.
So we would go to normal, or I don't want to say the word normal anymore. Been cautioned not to go back to that world. But prior to the pandemic, we always offered summer school. However, it was one campus for our TK through 8th grade students. We are proposing this year to have summer school at each of our campuses. So a summer school at Dpol Elementary, a summer school at Merced Elementary, and a summer school at Bryant, and you'll see the next side is the high school. At DPE and Marks, the idea behind summer school is re-engagement. We would like to offer, instead of summer school, it'd be a summer camp. And where students are, the focus is essential standards and writing, but the also focus is on getting kids to love school and love being on campus and exciting them to be re-engaged in our school system. So that's the focus. So they will have different camp options that are tied to learning, so more like project-based learning summer camp. So for example, a student would go to basket weaving in the morning, and then in the afternoon they would write about basket weaving and their experiences. And obviously when you're using your writing skills, you're reading, you're writing, you're working on literacy skills and all that it encompasses. So, and then they would switch, so it's a 3-week camp, and so each week they'd have a different experience on their campus and learn new things. And so that would be TK through 5th grade. And then our 6th, 7th, and 8th is kind of broken down into 3 different areas. One is very similar, but embedding math into that. The second would be a math prereq class and then for our 8th graders, we want to do a freshman academy. We're still working with the lingo to get students ready for the freshman year, talk about AG requirements, talk about credits, let's discuss what they're going to need to know, transcripts, and of course math and writing, and just getting them ready for the freshman year. That would be our Tk8 Summer School, and we definitely are expanding it to include more teachers and hopefully more students. After this gets approved, we'll get interest and start working.
Are there any questions? Call for the vote. That passes. 10.5 Dpol High Summer School. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mr. Merced, second by Mrs. Davis. Ms. Grohl.
We still, high school summer school, the reason it's a different item is because it is really driven by need. And based on some of the numbers you guys saw on Tuesday, there's definitely a need. So we are still working out looking at transcripts, evaluating transcripts. And so we'll be offering in person. So let's say we have 100 students that need English 9, then we'll have some direct instruction with in person, but then we're also getting creative with Edgenuity. So some students would be in person still in the but working through Edgenuity. And then we're also doing the Math Academy. So we'll be also teaching those prereq skills so students are successful and being proactive and preparing them for the next math class that they'll be going into.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Hall?
I do have one. Transportation will be offered.
Definitely, and food services.
Okay.
And you see an additional cost also because we have to, for pairs, additional pairs for supervision, because we still have to follow pandemic guidelines, and then also our RN for tracking purposes.
Any other questions? Vote. Passes. Thank you. 10.6 Annual Declaration of Need for Fully Qualified Educators. Is there a motion? By Mrs. Davis. Second. Seconded by Mr. Merced.
So this is the annual declaration, just to, in case we do not find fully qualified teachers, it allows us to hire emergency class, we're going to sign up permits for teachers.
Any questions? Vote. Passes. 10.7 Adoption Board Policy and Regulation Exhibits for 6173 Education for Homeless Children and Board Policy 6173.1 Education for Foster Youth. Is there a motion? By Mr. O'Banion, seconded by
Me.
Mr. Merced. Dr. Norton.
So these were the first readings on Tuesday night, and this is just updated policies that again keep us compliant.
Thank you. Are there any questions, Dr. Norton? Call for the vote. And it passes. 10.8 Adoption of Board Policy 1312.3 Uniform Compliant Procedures. Administrative Regulation 1312.3 Uniform Compliant Procedures and Williams Compliant Policies and Procedures. Is there a motion? So moved. By Mr. Merced.
Second.
Second by Ms. Davis. Mrs. Davis, Dr. Norton.
So similar to the past laws, this is just specifically towards uniform complaint procedures and ways.
Call for the vote. Mr. Van Wert. That passes. Item 10.9 was added, resolution number 2021-16, authorizing recognition banners for graduation and promotion.
So
Is
moved.
there a motion by Mrs. Davis? Second. Second by Mr. Merced. Dr. Miller.
So generally, you can't necessarily hand free things to students or to the public or anything like that, but this is basically an item associated directly with the pandemic. And we purchased them last year through a resolution also to be able to provide banners, basically graduation banners and promotion banners to our seniors and our 8th graders with their picture on it, and so they have a memory. So they could take it with them versus all of the other stuff associated with the pandemic and not being on campus all the time, and things like that. This is an opportunity for us to give them a memory.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Call for the vote. Passes. Personnel, 11.1, middle school principal, Bryant Middle School, recommended candidate, Marla Sansom. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mr. Van Wert, seconded by Mrs. Davis. Dr. Miller?
And so through the interview process, we were able to hire a new principal from Bryant Middle School, Marla Sansom. We get her, she comes by way of Fireball, Los Deltas Unified School District. And she has a lot of experience, a lot of successful experience. And so we're excited about her future at Bryant Middle School.
Thank you, Dr. Miller. Are there any questions? Call for the vote. It passes. 11.2, cafeteria support
Second.
second by Mrs. Davis. Dr. Miller.
So, Laura's been a sub in our district for quite a while, and so this is an opportunity to bring on somebody that's been a successful sub, and we're excited to have her part of the team.
Thank you. Call for the vote. Passes. 11.3 academic coach for the 2021-2022 school year. Merced Elementary School. Recommended candidate Samantha Padilla. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mrs. Davis, second by Mr. Merced. Dr. Miller.
And so, this is, Padilla's been a very strong teacher in our district for several years, and now, we have an opportunity to, give her an opportunity to be the academic coach. She went through the interview process and, was a successful candidate, and, I'm excited about the future that she will bring to Mark. She's already a teacher at Mark's, but then now she'll have influence over all classrooms at Mark's Elementary. So, and similar, the 11.1, 11.2, 11.3, all three positions are replacements. They're not new positions. So, but again, Samantha Padilla is as a recommended candidate for academic coach. So we're excited about her.
Are there any questions? Call for the vote. Passes. 11.4 job description, superintendent of schools. Is there a motion? So moved.
So moved.
By Mr. Merced, second by Mrs. Davis. Dr. Miller.
So this is a updated job description for superintendent position. So this will be posted for a replacement of the superintendent.
Any questions? Call for the vote. And it passes. 11.5 extended leave, employee number 466. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved.
By Mr. Van Wert, seconded by Mr. Merced. Dr. Miller.
It's just a general statement. It's confidential.
Thank you. Any questions? Call for the vote. It passes. 11.6, create and hire COVID-19 temporary position, curriculum specialist, TOSA, 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mr. Merced, seconded by Mrs. Davis. Dr. Miller.
So directly related to the pandemic, the TOSA is basically a teacher on special assignment, and this focus will be curriculum specialists. And it's basically supporting the district in the area of curriculum instruction and just teaching.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Call for the vote. Passes. 11.7, create and hire COVID-19 temporary position, intervention counselor, 2021-2022 school year. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So
By
moved.
Mr. Merced, second by Mrs. Davis. Dr. Miller.
So similar to 11.6, this is kind of the social emotional side of intervention counselors to be able to service students directly tied to the pandemic. And these are, again, these are temporary positions paid for through COVID-19 monies for ESSER funds.
Thank you. Any questions? My question is, can current employees apply for these?
Yes, and have rights back to those jobs, absolutely.
Thank you. Call for the vote. And it passes. Information and discussion items, 12.1, Williams Quarterly Compliant Report Summary. Williams? Do the Williams information.
Yeah, is there?
Thank you.
So in regards to Williams' complaints, I'm going to specify this time, Williams specifically addresses insufficient textbooks, teachers being misassigned or not rightly credentialed to teach whatever course they're teaching, or if there are concerns about the facilities. So those are the three areas that Williams covers. And specifically in those three areas, I'm happy to report that we have not had a single complaint for the third quarter.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Mr. Lopez? Item 12.2, first reading, December 2020 policy updates.
Yeah, this is just similar to other board policies in the first reading, and then the next board agenda, they'll be up for approval.
Thank you. Are there any questions? 12.3 WASP mid-cycle visit for Westside High School. I'm assuming would be Priscilla.
Yes. Can you speak to it? I know that they had a fantastic review. I saw something, Mrs. Davis was on the Zoom call. And then also, they had a fantastic report on here. Would you like to share anything, Mr. Lebo?
Sure, Dr. Mel. I didn't know I was speaking this evening, but that's good. A two-day visit mid-cycle review is something that the staff at George Christian should be tremendously proud of. It took us about 14, 15 months of work. There was some time off that they came back into work at no cost to the district on their time. We tried to meet monthly and focus on WASP. You meet weekly, but we took 1 week out of the month going into this, and then we submitted in January, February. They came out, no, actually it was all by Zoom. I think what the staff and myself are most proud of is that there were no recommendations for improvements. They felt that it evolved to the point of all the requests they had made in their initial, and I'm glad you turned that camera off. I'm just ecstatic about it. Literally, put in the time and the effort and overcome adversity, and dealt with everything that came to GC, and it was good. I'm proud of my peeps. I don't know what else I can say. It's been an arduous process. I've been nervous until it got done, and I'm glad it's over. That's all I got to say. I'm just proud of my people.
Congratulations, Mr. Dpol. I know from last time there's not very many alternative education programs that are accredited. That's correct, right?
True, and we're only one of two in the state of California who have the same requirements for graduation. And we're only one of two who test their students in the same fashions that we do at our comprehensive sites. And so one other note, we've tested everybody for SBAT, so we have finished. We did our makeups, we did our independent studies. We brought our distance learners in 2 cohorts and tested them on back-to-back Fridays, and yeah, we tested them all. And they didn't just blow through because they weren't done until they started about 8, and they didn't get done until about 1:45 on Friday. So we'll see how they score out, but they're treated in the same fashion as any other student in the district at any other comprehensive site, and that's the way I like it.
Very good. Good job. Very good. That's something to be proud of in the district. 12.4, resignations and retirements.
So I'd just like to thank the 3 folks that resigned for their service and that in the district. It's been a difficult year. Some have been with us for a lot of years, some have been with 1 year. But again, I just want to thank them for their service.
Thank you. 4.5 Dos Palos Oklahoma School District's initial proposal for 2021-22 negotiations.
If you recall, the last board meeting, there was a sunshine letter from Dpol, and this is the district's initial proposal.
Questions? Commissioner? Thank you, Dr. Moore. Written reports. 13.1 Educational and Personnel Services. 13.2 Food Services, Rhonda Sullivan. 13.3 Health Services, Priscilla Whitaker. 13.4 Maintenance Operations and Transportations, Matthew McCullough. 13.5 Principal, Franco. 13.6 Special Education, Laura Delmas. 13.7 Technology, Pajay Lee. I don't think I mentioned that Mr. Lopez was Educational and Personal Services. 14.1 Oral Reports, Fiscal and Cash Status Update, presented by Melissa Kapinski, Assistant Superintendent, Business Services.
It's hard to believe that we are in April. We're really blown by. I keep replacing estimates in the months for the cash flow to actuals. Like, there's so many more green boxes at the top of the chart than there are pink boxes. So that just struck me as, wow, where did the year go? So as I said, the cash flow here now shows actuals through the end of March. And if you look at the bottom of the sheet on the green line in the bottom, we started in July with 7.6 million, as shown there in the bottom row. And because of the deferrals, you'll see a little drop in cash continuing this month, next month, and all the way through June. But our ending cash balance is projected at the moment to be $1.3,492 as of June 30th. Not to be confused with fund balance in the yellow box bottom right, which is 9 million. That reflects the cash on hand, the 1.3 million of cash on hand, plus the cash owed to us. So we're still in good shape for that. I also want to briefly mention that we actually are in a very unprecedented time with the receipt of the federal and state dollars, the one-time dollars that we'll be getting for the COVID, to our response to the COVID pandemic. And the team has been working really hard to gather stakeholder feedback regarding the needs of our students, because the students are our first priority with the funds that we'll be getting, these one-time funds, and they are extensive. For example, most recently, the district was allocated 3.3 million from the elementary and secondary emergency relief funds. That's the federal funds in the round two of federal funds. Those will be expended through September of 2023. So we have some time to make a plan and carry the plan out. And then the state just allocated funds through AB 86, funds for the in-person instruction grant amounting to $879,492, and funds for extended learning opportunities for our students. And that amount is $1.8 million. So we're in the process of gathering stakeholder feedback, developing our plan, making the best use of these one-time dollars, because it is an unprecedented time of one-time dollars, not to be confused with what we will continue to operate our budgets with. The ongoing dollars that will remain the same. The governor's due to present his May revise for the state budget for next fiscal year. So that's fast approaching, and we'll see what he has in store that will help us to determine our ongoing budget, but we will have these one-time dollars to make good use of. So that's exciting.
Are there any more talks about obviously we're in some deferrals, but you always hear they've over projected, and
exactly right. So
nothing has changed, right? So they've identified that there was they thought it was going to be a lot worse than it was.
Right.
Are we getting our money back, or are they still giving us what they told us they were going to give us?
Well, it takes legislative action to change the deferrals that are in place. But that has been, I think, a focus of the governor and the legislature, as in the conversations, that maybe they will have legislature to eliminate the ones that happen February, March, April, May, but they might want to keep that June to July deferral, which
'Cause they
really
don't
just
know.
helps the state have a better cash flow process. It's, kind of like the shell game off of it.
Yeah,
So-
rob from the local school districts to
But I didn't really say that. Right?
fund.
So. Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
14.2 Superintendent Report.
I'm just excited to report so many kids back on campus. The number of kids, especially at the elementary levels, I think we're at about 85–90% of kids on campus, which is special. A lot of districts are not in that place right now. And we have the opportunity to bring that many kids back on campus. It kind of tapers off as the students get older, but in the grand scheme of things, we're open for business, which is fantastic. So I just can't thank, I know we talk about appreciation, but I can't thank enough the staff members that make our schools look like they do, because they look fantastic. The school site staff, teachers and classified staff members that make it a welcome environment for kids to come back to and be excited about. There's a lot of fantastic things happening. I saw Mrs. Darnell the other day with a helmet on and a water balloon fight with a helmet and a big poncho rain jacket thing. And so it was saw some pictures, and so there's a lot of great things going on campus. I think there's a duct tape coming pretty soon, which is going to be really cool for her and Mrs. Perez, not the kids. But so there's a lot of good things going on campuses, and so again, it's just exciting to see some kind of normal. And then regarding my resignation, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank the school board members for their support for the last 3 years. It's been an honor to be the superintendent in Dos Palos. I want to thank the leadership team, teachers, classified staff members. There's been great work done by the team, and there's great members of the team that are pulling all in the right direction. So I can't say enough about all of you that are here right now, and also a lot of the folks that are not here right now. There's a lot of great work being done, and I want to thank Sergio for your commitment, Sergio, over the last couple of years as our CCA president. Can't thank you enough. And just like I said, again, in general, it's been a great experience. The community's been fantastic to me. And again, I lead with very gracious. And so I thank everybody.
Thank you.
But you're still stuck with me until June 30th.
14.3 report for board members. Ms. Austin.
I just wanted to once again thank the teachers and staff for all the hard work that you guys have been putting in. And I want to especially recognize the high school because they're trying to make it as normal, for lack of a better word, as possible. Pursuing the ideas of, prom and a regular graduation and all those things that our kids have missed out on. So I just appreciate the work that's going into that.
Thank you. Mr. Railworth?
No, anything.
Mr. Merced?
Happy to see kids back. Happy to be in that line. Drop my child off here at March Elementary School. Hey, I can wait it out. She's smiling. We're getting it figured out. So kids are happy. I can hear them. I stayed home today. I could hear, I hear their laughter, hear the giggles. She's excited to be dropped off. Happy to see the kids back at the high school. And like Katina says, we're trying to give back so much of the things that they've lost. So thank you guys. Thank all.
Thank you, Mr. Merced. Mrs. Davis?
Mr. Limos, I'd like to say again, thank you to yourself and your staff. What you were able to accomplish in your WASC report and how you've done things it's amazing. And thank you for that. Thank all of you because we've all worked so hard and gone through so much to get these smiling, laughing kids back, and that's where they need to be, is in school every day with you. So thank you all for that at the high school. And I know that there has been a lot of vocal people about well, why can't we have a prom and why can't we this and why can't we that? And as much as we take a deep breath and say, well, we're in the purple tier, other than just 24 hours ago and our hands are tied and we can't do these things. As soon as, even before the whole red tier came, I know that you guys have been trying to move things forward so you could hit the ground running with a plan for a traditional as possible graduation, senior breakfast, prom. And the fact that, I mean, we have all of these sports going on concurrently right now that normally wouldn't. I stopped by the softball game today, and one of the players kind of mid-game came out because she had another practice to get to. So thank you to all the coaches and everyone for working together so that these kids can try to do everything that they want to do. And just again, thank you for your commitment to these kids, because they deserve the best and more that we can give them. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Davis. Mrs. Arias?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Vaughn?
Nothing.
I have two things. First thing, sentiments like Mr. Merced. Monday morning, Maria got a text message, Dr. Miller got a text message. It's 7:30. I'm in line, dropping my first grader off, and I'm all the way on Valeria. And I say, I've never been so happy to be back in this line, right? I'm being honest, and it's great. My son's been all giddy, and it's been 4 days in a row, and he's still as giddy as they come. So great things are happening. Thank you to everybody involved. We've got to continue to do that, training in the secondary. The second thing is I'd like to congratulate Dr. Miller on his new position, closer to home. Thank you for all that you've done for our district. I truly feel that you've been steering the ship, and we've got a lot of good people in roles. And I truly, for myself, truly appreciate everything that you've done for our district. I wish you the best. When we play touch-up football next year, we're going to beat you, and you're going to be a loser again. So
I thank you for all that.
yeah, we're going to keep it real. But thank you, Dr. Miller, for everything. 15.1, requests from board members for future agenda items. Ms. Austin? No. Mr. Bellward? Mr. Merced? No. Mrs. Davis?
I would like to see what the plan is to put the stop gaps in place for the audit findings, please.
Mrs. Arias? Response? Nothing. I don't know that it needs to be agendized, but I'd like to continue to see what we can do with the fluidity of the what the governor's got us going through the standards and the tiers and everything about what we can do to get more secondary kids on campus. I know that there are a few that are on there 4 days a week. I would love to see, continue to work on what's it going to take for us to get all of our secondary kids back on campus. Go ahead.
One thing I heard the other day, Wednesday actually, which would be yesterday morning, that on June 15th, the tiers go away.
I understand that, but I want to do my favorite.
Tomorrow.
I want to do it. I want to see what we can do to get back 4 days a week before the end of the school year, so that we know what we're looking forward to when we start back in August. I think it's really important. I know I have one that's home 2 days a week, and it's killing him not to be there 4 days a week. So, okay, 16.1. I need a motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
By Mr. Merced, second by Mrs. Davis. Call for the vote. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for everything.